Newly elected executive mayor of the city of Johannesburg, Dr. Mpho Phalatse, says work to meet the city's agenda for the year is well underway. This is 2 months after a coalition agreement was put in place and finalized following the local government elections in November. Mayor Phalatse now joins us to outline her priorities and how she plans to usher in this new era of service delivery to the residents of the city of Johannesburg. Mayor, good evening and thank you very much for your time and joining us tonight here on In Focus. You had a week-long induction with your MMCs, and just last week you're coming out of a strategy session and you've come up with something that you've coined a golden start. What's the plan? What's behind this golden start? And you literally have 5 months till the end of the financial year. What could you achieve in that particular time?
Good evening to you. Good evening to your viewers as well. Well, our coalition agreement was actually not concluded 2 months ago. If you recall, our MMCs were appointed on the 13th of December. So that's exactly a month ago.
Indeed, indeed.
We put together the coalition in Johannesburg. So it has been a month. Spent a week with the MMCs in induction. I spent a further 3 days with them this year from the 3rd to the 5th of Jan, looking at possible turnaround strategies in the various parts of the city. Of course, what we need our residents to understand is that we inherited a budget and business plans which are in place, and there are commitments until the end of June this year, which is the end of the financial year. The new financial year will start on the 1st of July, and that's when we can effectively start rolling out our plans. We are, however, going into an adjustment budget, which means that we will be allowed to adjust up to 10% of existing plans and budgets. We've started looking at performance that's low in the various departments and entities. We've started looking at budgets that are not moving, because that is where we could potentially start adjusting to resolve some of the immediate challenges that we have. Now, across all the various areas, MMCs have identified quick wins and low-hanging fruits. For instance, we will be opening a substance abuse treatment center in Davidsonville quite soon. There'll be clinic expansions in about 11 clinics. We'll be rolling out COVID-19 vaccination in about 39 clinics. That's in health and social development. We will also be doing pothole fillings, resurfacing of roads, scuffling, as well as refurbishing our buses. That's in JRA and transport. In public safety, we'll be bringing back Operation Buamteto, which will really be sounding the call to everyone in the city of Joburg to remember that the city has some bylaws that we need to abide by, and we'd like to go back to law and order in the city of Johannesburg. So that will be a citywide initiative. There are various law enforcement agencies within the city, whether it's environmental health, development planning, looking at illegal buildings, and so on. We will make sure that together with JMPD, we make sure that people adhere to the rule of law. We also want to get our municipal courts to function, so we want to make sure there's successful prosecution through our municipal courts, and we will be driving that as well. We want our streets to be clean and so many other things. We will be focusing on the inner city as well to reclaim it through our inner city rejuvenation program. We'll be partnering with the City Improvement District to reclaim hijacked buildings, clean the inner city, and improve safety and security through increased visibility, where our residents will be able to see a police officer every 5 minutes in the inner city. That's the plan. So we'll be deploying a much higher number of officers than what we've had in the past. We'll also be making better use of CCTV camera footage through our Intelligence Operations Center, and be working more closely with SAPS as well as other law enforcement agencies. These are just some of the few examples of plans that we have that we can already start rolling out in the immediate term.
These are big plans, and of course yourself and your executive are not the officials who will be on the ground, who will be implementing this. So you need to a degree, inculcate this new culture of service delivery, so that the residents of the city can once again have confidence that if they do pick up a phone, that there will be somebody on the other line firstly, or at least some kind of a response that they will get immediately, and action will then ensue. So what is your plan as far as inculcating that culture of service delivery?
You know, I believe that leadership is important in framing the culture of any organization. And I believe that we have the right leadership in myself and the 10 MMCs in this multi-party government. And we've already seen the response from senior officials in all the activities we've engaged in so far, including the induction and the strat plan. We worked very closely with the city manager, the group head of governance, group head of group strategy, planning, research and coordination, as well as various other senior managers, including the chief financial officer of the city. And there's renewed energy, there's hope, and you can see that the city really has good officials. They just need good leadership. They need the right culture from the top. And we're already starting to see wheels turning. You see that people are energized and ready to get working. We are, of course, also being very hard on corruption, and we're communicating that. We don't want any leakages in the system. We want every cent to work for our residents, and we're communicating that as well. And as long as people do their jobs, we will be strengthening performance management, of course. Performance can be measured and it can be managed, and people who are not delivering can be performance managed out of the system. We're making sure that we're putting those systems in place. There's been lots of gaps, many people operating without performance scorecards and getting away with it. With COVID, we've had many people working from home. Some have been on holiday. You know, that holiday has come to an end. We will be performance managing people, whether you're in your office or you're at home. You will need to account for your time because the ratepayers are paying you for that time. So all those systems will make sure that people comply, and those who don't comply will not be able to stick around because the systems will work them out. But we do want people to take pride in their work and serve our residents with pride.
That area right there, performance management, I've heard in some quarters that apparently it's not particularly a wholesome word to use, especially in public service and when you've got to deal with labor. As soon as you mention performance management, you might be running a collision course. They're on a collision course with labor movement. How do you plan to approach that particular aspect of things?
Well, performance management should be integral to the workings of any organization, particularly an organization as big as the city of Johannesburg. You're not only responsible for what is directly in front of you. There are so many codependencies in the system, and any official that does not deliver on their mandate affects at any given point in time many functionalities in the city, and we can't afford that. So we will unfortunately have to be strict. We will be engaging with organized labor, also to communicate with them our plans and our strategies and what we expect from the labor force in the city, and we expect them to support us and not to work against us. After all, we all have the same vision of seeing the city work.
Yeah. You're inheriting, as you already mentioned, business plans that were already in place because budgets are already set. You can literally only adjust about 10% of the existing budget plan that is there. So, for example, you would be inheriting things like what they announced just before you came on, the smart city. I don't really think it's a smart city, but it's an app basically that allows you to interact with the municipality, be able to get your bill, be able to pay your bill, be able to lodge a complaint and so on and so forth. What do you plan to do with that, and how do you plan to enhance it?
Well, there are many plans in the system which we in fact supported through voting for the budget. You'll recall that to pass the budget, some of the parties that are part of the current coalition assisted in passing the budget in the last financial year. So, you know, we cannot say we're completely detached from whatever is in those plans. However, we do have concerns with implementation. We had a look a few days ago at our capital projects, and we actually discovered that there's been a lack of movement in a lot of the projects, and we're very concerned that we may need to do some adjustments in the mid-year adjustment. So any program in the system that is working, that is a good idea, we will continue to support. We're not going to can things for the sake of canning them, but what is not working and where there is no performance, we may need to make some adaptation.
Yeah. You know, a big issue around municipalities, except for the fact that, of course, many of them are living beyond their means, is the fact that some of them actually do return a lot of that capital budget without actually achieving much for the residents. How do you plan to deal with that non-compliance where budgets are not moving?
That is a problem of governance, a problem of leadership. So we spent time in the mayoral committee meeting, in fact, yesterday, looking at that value chain and looking at how we are getting projects ready before they're handed over to the implementing agent, looking at capacity within departments, client departments and entities, to project manage their own projects in line with the implementing agents. So in the city of Johannesburg, most of our capital projects are implemented by the JDA, the Joburg Development Agency. There are problems in the JDA currently where they did not sit for an AGM. They don't have a proper board. There's a lot of issues. So there's leadership issues within the JDA, which we will be taking care of. We will be appointing new directors to our boards. We're hoping to do that by mid-February so that we get all our boards functional and we get the right leadership in place to drive the work that needs to happen in the various entities. That's number one. But once we have the leadership within the JDA, we then need to look at the client departments and make sure they're capacitated to get projects ready. So often budgets are given to departments for projects which they're not ready yet to hand over to the JDA. And while they're still trying to get ready, time is moving. Before they know it, we've gone past the mid-year adjustment and we have to take money back. And one thing we hate is to give money back even to Treasury. We don't want to see that happening. We've identified all the gaps and we know exactly what needs to happen to close them, and that will happen in the immediate term.
Right, Dr. Mpho Phalatse, Executive Mayor of the City of Johannesburg, with us tonight. And if you've got your comments or questions and views, you can send them through on Twitter at Newzroom405. Otherwise, 072-110-5584. That's the WhatsApp number where we can grab those views tonight. We continue on In Focus in a moment. Do stay with us. Welcome back, live with you tonight here on In Focus, Newzroom Afrika, Channel 405. Conversation continues with the Executive Mayor of the City of Johannesburg, Dr. Mpho Phalatse. Of course, she was outlining moments ago, before we got a little bit of a break in transmission while we try and get her back on, what her priorities will be, at least in the remaining few months of this financial year, and how she plans particularly to fix the roads, potholes, build up a little bit of that particular infrastructure, but make sure that she brings back the culture of service delivery and discipline, and give meaningful leadership to the officials in the city, but also ensuring that they deal decisively with corruption by the reviving of the municipal courts. That's what we're hearing, and of course a number of other initiatives that particularly the mayor is looking at, particularly when it comes to implementation of projects and ensuring that there are no budgets that are sent back to Treasury, and ensuring that there is better planning around those implementations of projects, and ensuring that before the project is handed over to the implementing agent, certain dots and rather I's are dotted and T's are crossed and things are in place. We seem to be having some difficulty getting the mayor back on there on the line. We would like to hear a little bit more about how she plans to deal with the question of the culture of non-payment, but also how she plans to bring change to the culture of reporting on corruption. Some interesting things around the 7 fundamental areas that she planned to actually deal with. We will, of course, try and get the mayor back on, particularly to talk to those issues around the priority on a business-friendly city. Safety and security is what she has touched on. A caring city, a well-run city, an inclusive city, and of course the 7 fundamental there being a smart city, and how she plans to usher in that era and transition the city into being a smart city. Some challenges there getting the mayor on. Meanwhile, in other news, Acting Chief Justice Raymond Zondo says utterances by Tourism Minister Lindiwe Sisulu that the Constitution has done little for the victims of colonialism is an insult to black judges. In an opinion piece penned last week, Sisulu claimed the Constitution has given rise to what she calls a sea of poverty. Government has already distanced itself from what it terms a reckless utterance.
I just want to say that we as the judiciary have never said that we should not be criticized. We do not say even now that we should not be criticized. We accept that we may be criticized, but we say criticism should be fair and should have a proper factual basis. But this is not criticism. It is an insult to the justices of the Constitutional Court, the judges of the Supreme Court of Appeal, the judges president of the various divisions of the High Court, and all the African judges.
Zondo further defended his decision to respond through a briefing rather than meeting with the ANC's leadership or President Cyril Ramaphosa. He says he responded in this way as Sisulu directly insulted the Constitution.
The particular reason for responding is the insult, as opposed to even just the criticism, the insult. But in terms of meeting with the president and so on, that is something that we would decide at a certain stage. As I say, in 2015 or 2016, that meeting was called because there were continuing constant attacks on the judiciary. So for this one, I, at this stage, am happy that I deal with it in this way. What the executive or what the president is going to do, he will decide. As I say, we can't instruct him or instruct him what to do. We can't tell them what to do. We can't tell Parliament what to do when a senior member of Parliament behaves in this way. But we have a right to say this is completely unacceptable and it's an insult to the judiciary and it should not be allowed to happen.
The acting Chief Justice adds he won't back down or be deterred from guarding the rule of law.
We will not change that. We will continue to perform our functions in accordance with our oath of office. If that brings about the kinds of insults that Mrs. Sisulu has heaped on us, we will not change. We will still continue and do our job the way we are required to do it in accordance with our oath of office.
Right, that was, of course, what happened a little bit earlier on in that briefing with the acting Chief Justice, Justice Raymond Zondo. Back to our conversation tonight, we have the Mayor back with us. Now, Mayor, unfortunately, we lost you for a moment there. We wanted to just touch on a number of other issues around the 7 fundamentals which you hope to achieve now when you come into your 5-year tenure. But one of the issues highlighted today was the question around the change of culture around reporting corruption and highlighting the integrity of whistleblowers. We are dealing in the country at the moment with the Zondo report, and some of the whistleblowers in that particular report are feeling quite unprotected and unappreciated in a sense, and they've actually had to flee the country in some instances. How do you plan to address that?
Well, the city's Group Forensic and Investigation Services Unit under General Shadrach Sibiya is responsible for all forensic investigation, including whistleblower protection. The city does have a whistleblower protection policy. As you can imagine, I cannot share too much information about the ins and outs of our operations, as that might also compromise those operations in future. But the protection and safety of our whistleblowers is of paramount importance. We have been able to uncover quite a lot of corruption in the city, even in the past, through whistleblowers. There are many of them. Some of them are in the system, and they do bring information to the authorities to help us clamp down on corruption. And we will continue to protect them because we need to work with them. It's because of them that we know what we know.
Yeah. How much support are you getting for the hard line that you're taking, particularly on the electricity situation in Soweto?
Well, it depends. Support from who? You know, there are different stakeholders. There's residents who don't want to pay will obviously not support the hard line. Ratepayers who have to carry the burden of subsidizing people who can afford but refuse to pay are actually very excited about this hard line that we are taking. We're cognizant of the fact that there'll always be people who can't afford to pay. We've made a system available for them through the expanded social package, through which they can access free basic services legally, and we expect them to do so. Anything outside of that framework becomes illegal, and with Buya Mthetho and various other law enforcement initiatives, we will ensure that we end lawlessness in Johannesburg. A lot of people are excited. Remember, when ratepayers pay for their rates, we're able to then render services to the rich and poor alike. We're able to also upgrade and maintain our infrastructure, reducing outages, and the quality of life of our ratepayers, our residents, our business people, even the poor, will improve drastically. So this is something that we will be driving, and we'll be unapologetic about it.
Yeah. Some of the Soweto residents, particularly the ones that we've spoken to, saying the FBE program itself is poorly managed, in a sense that the portion that is supposed to be free ends up actually not getting to the people that it's supposed to get to. How are you improving that?
Well, I'm not sure of the nature of that complaint, because yes, much as there are challenges with free basic services, that should not be one of them. I know that there could be challenges, particularly with COVID, with registrations. We have started going online to make sure that we are reaching all the people who need to be reached. But with that, of course, you need to look at issues of connectivity and find a way to make sure that nobody is prohibited from accessing this service. Other challenges could be, of course, with the flow of information between billing, revenue, and the ESP unit, which is within social development. We are busy streamlining functions internally to make sure that we manage our data better. However, I'm not aware of people not accessing services who have applied for services. As you know, you do find backyard dwellings in some households where you have a stand with the main household and you have some backyard dwellers. Depending on the landlord, or the main landlord decides whether they want 1 meter for all of them or they want different meters for the people in the backyard. And that is really at the sole discretion of the landlord, how they want to manage, how they're accessing free basic services. So that could be perhaps where some of the challenges occur between landlords and their tenants. And where there are complaints, of course, we will intervene. Any tenant has the right to apply for their own meters, but they need the landlord to give permission. And that is, of course, subject to the type of lease agreement between the two. So those are just some of the challenges and some of the spaces that government cannot always enter. However, we do our best to make sure that all residents of all types are catered for.
I tell you what, the kind of complaint, for example, you're saying there's 50 kilowatt hours of electricity allocated to a household. Firstly, it's whether or not that 50 kilowatt per hour is adequate. Have we done an audit of those indigent families to say, is it 50 kilowatts per hour? Is it 100 kilowatts per hour that is required? But also, there's a sense that that portion is not ring-fenced, because ultimately it's money that is not really free. It is paid for somehow, but it is never ring-fenced to ensure that it goes to the indigent families. It could be money that is there and is used for other priorities.
Okay, I hear your question now. Okay, firstly, let's look at the adequacy of what we give to our indigent residents. How we determine the benefit is based on your income. So you have to produce certain documentation as proof of income or even proof of no income. And based on that, you are then categorized according to different bands. There are 4 bands now. And depending on which band you fall under, you will then be told how much of the free basic water you will get, how much of the free basic electricity you will get. But also remember that per household, each member of the household can also apply. So you can get a combined benefit, but of course there is a cap. So that is where government can go. And this is a subsidy. So government is subsidizing people. Government is not saying people should depend entirely on the government, because there is already cross-subsidization. So the ratepayers are cross-subsidizing those who can't pay, and whatever that we get from Treasury we also use. Now, your second question, I believe, refers to what we get from Treasury, which does go towards free basic services, but in some instances also covers a lot of the non-technical losses. Non-technical losses are losses that are not due to the system itself, but due to theft, vandalism, people connecting illegally to the grid, bypassing meters, etc., which really equals to also subsidizing those who are not paying at the end of the day. So that is where some of the money might be spent, but certainly not on any other project. It is spent on making sure that those who can't afford are assisted.
Right. And I believe the Speaker of Council has called a meeting, particularly tomorrow, and this will be around the appointment of chairpersons of the various oversight committees. The ANC itself fielding a number of candidates. What is the feeling from the Democratic Alliance in the city of Johannesburg on the ANC playing a legislative oversight? Think they're able to do that?
Well, oversight is about holding the executive to account. It is about checking that they're doing what they're meant to be doing, that they're delivering on their mandates. Any political party can play an oversight role. I do hope that the ANC's intentions are noble and that they don't want to take up these positions to cause trouble in those positions. Section 79 committees are very important. There needs to be a healthy interface between the executive and the legislative arm of council for the proper running of government. So whoever gets those positions needs to remember that at the end of the day, it's about our residents and it's not about political agendas that we may have. Of course, we will also be fielding our own candidates as the coalition. We will be fielding candidates for the chair's position as well as all the chairperson positions, and may the best candidates get those positions.
Executive Mayor Mpho Phalatse, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much for joining us tonight here on In Focus. That is Dr. Mpho Phalatse, the Executive Mayor of the city of Johannesburg.